Hey guys, tonight we begin with something delicate, precise, and very slightly uncomfortable. You're not in your memory foam sanctuary anymore. You're lying on a floor, specifically a tightly woven mat of rice straw called tatami. The air smells faintly of wood smoke and sandalwood. A paper lantern flickers. You're in Edo-era Japan, sometime between the 1600s and 1800s, in a town where curfews are enforced by bell towers, and bedtime isn't just when you feel sleepy. It's an entire cultural performance. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from, and what time it is for you. It's always a joy to hear how far and wide this sleepy journey travels. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You begin by stepping onto tatami barefoot, always barefoot. It's soft but firm, with a faint grass scent that clings to the soles of your feet. If you were born into a family of merchants, farmers, or lower-tier samurai, this mat is your entire sleeping surface, and also your dining room, your office, your everything. The edges are bordered in cloth, often plain, though if you're high-ranking you might have a little flourish, maybe indigo-dyed waves or gold-thread chrysanthemums along the seam. Careful not to step on the edges, that's a faux pas. Tatami is more than just flooring. It's a timekeeper, a status symbol, and a stage for ritual. Your room is modest, but pristine. A single ink scroll hangs on the wall. It might be a quiet haiku, or a brush-painted scene of Mount Fuji disappearing into mist. The sliding doors, shoji, filter moonlight through rice paper, casting the room in silver and shadow. Your body aches slightly from the day. Maybe you were hauling buckets, sweeping storefronts, or tending charcoal braziers. Either way, your back welcomes the low posture of the floor, no slouching here. You sit straight, legs folded beneath you, knees tingling, ankles quietly protesting, and you bow your head before even touching your bedding. Nearby, a cedar chest waits, housing tonight's futon. There's no closet, just this wooden box polished with years of use, maybe wrapped in a cotton cloth during colder months. The lid creaks gently. You lift it. Inside is the scent of yuzu peel, charcoal ink and sun-dried cotton. Your fingers brush against the bedding, layers of careful softness, a shikibutan mattress, a kakebutan quilt, and a pillow stuffed with buckwheat hulls. That pillow, about the size of a paperback novel, and just as noisy when you move your head. You kneel again to unfold the shikibutan. It's heavier than you expect. Thick cotton layered like a sleeping sandwich. There's no bounce. It lays flat and wide, covering about half your tatami square. You smooth the creases. There's something calming about this. Maybe it's the rhythm, the order, the way your hands know where to go even if your brain is half asleep. Then comes the kakebutan, the comforter. Some families stitch theirs with old kimono silk, patchworked from robes passed down across generations. It's not fancy, but it's personal. You tug it across the futon like spreading moonlight over a still pond. If you're one of the wealthier city dwellers, say, a merchant with a modest fortune, your kakebutan might even be perfumed. Scented sachets of plum blossoms or green tea are tucked between folds. Historians still argue whether this was for health, wealth, or pure vanity. You lower yourself onto the bedding. Not flop, not bounce, lower, slowly, dignified. This is not a mattress. It is ceremony. The air shifts slightly. The scent of incense from earlier in the evening still lingers in the fibres of your yukata. You pull the quilt over your shoulders, feeling its crisp weight settle like a quiet yes. Now, let's zoom out for a moment. In most Edo homes, there's no bedroom, just a multi-purpose room. During the day, the futons are stored. At night, the same space transforms into a sleep zone. If you're a child, you might sleep sandwiched between parents. If you're a guest, they'll offer you their best futon and insist it's nothing. Hospitality in Edo is measured in layers of cotton and humility. Meanwhile, down in the alleyways of Edo's poorer districts, people are laying out thinner mats on wooden floors, or just the ground. Wealth determines padding. But everyone, rich or poor, follows the same flow. Unfold, smooth, bow, sleep. There's a dignity in that. Even in discomfort, even in poverty, the ritual of rest persists. And yet sleep in Edo is not always silent. The city breathes at night. Crickets sing. Pipes click. The neighbour sneezes through a paper wall. Your cousin sighs in his sleep and kicks you once gently in the shin. You let it go. Because in this world, the bedroom is shared, the air is shared, dreams are communal, and while your blanket may be thin, the fabric of ritual wraps you tighter than silk. There's no phone charging beside your head, no blue light, no playlist, just the rhythmic hiss of your own breath and the faint creak of bamboo eaves adjusting to the night's cooling air. It's bedtime in Edo. The streets are quiet, but not empty. A patrol bell sounds in the distance. Someone somewhere is still awake, counting lamp shadows or sipping barley tea. You don't need a clock to tell you it's late. The lantern in the hallway has nearly burned itself out. Time drips slowly here, like the last drops of ink on a brush. You turn your head, hear the rustle of your pillow's husks, and breathe into stillness. This is how a city of over 1 million people, all packed into wooden houses and fire-prone alleys, manages to fall asleep. Not with silence, but with rhythm, with ritual. And with one final tug of your futon around your chin, you join them. The futon lies beneath you like a carefully tamed cloud, flat, structured, and mercilessly honest. There's no memory foam here, no deep plush mattress to cradle your spine into forgetfulness. Just quilted cotton layers placed directly on the floor, supported by nothing but the silent trust between you and the woven tatami. You don't so much collapse into it as you respectfully enter its domain. Setting up your bed isn't a chore, it's choreography. You unfold the futon in slow, practiced motions, each step a continuation of the last. Everything is deliberate. The shikibuton laid straight, corners aligned with the grain of the floor mat. Then the kakabuton, folded like a gift, draped evenly, as if symmetry will ward off bad dreams. And maybe it does. Across the city, tens of thousands of others are performing the same ritual. Fathers smooth the bedding, mothers tuck in their children, apprentices unroll straw mats in merchant stalls. Courtesans in the pleasure district lay their futons behind drawn silk screens, listening for footsteps and whispers. It's a silent chorus of sleep preparation, timed not by ticking clocks, but by gut instinct and the sound of temple bells echoing through wooden streets. Historically, the futon, as we know it, began evolving during the Edo-period. Before that, people slept on simple straw mats, or directly on the floor, using only robes or thin blankets. The widespread use of cotton and eventually layered bedding coincided with Japan's booming domestic textile production. Futons became a standard across all classes, though their thickness and fabric varied wildly. The richer your household, the fluffier your layers. The poorer you were, the closer you slept to the earth. And if you were a guest in someone's home, you'd be offered their finest bedding no matter what it cost them. Hospitality was sacred. Sleep was not just rest, it was honour. In an age before bedrooms were permanent fixtures, the futon was your portal to sleep and your ticket to a space of your own. You didn't own a bed, you owned the right to unfurl one. But the process wasn't just about sleeping, it was about returning. Each morning you rolled up the futon, shook it out and stored it neatly in a lacquered chest or in a special storage alcove called a noshiya. It was cleaned, sun-dried, and maintained with near-obsessive diligence. Futons that weren't aired out would attract mould or worse, mites. A musty futon was a social shame. A clean futon? Proof you had your life together. You try not to think about it, but in the corner of the room is a karakasa, an umbrella-like wooden rack used for drying bedding in the sun. Your mother hauls it out every clear morning, dangling futons like giant tofu sheets across its arms. The neighbourhood ladies gossip over the fence about who forgot to sun theirs yesterday. One man down the street hasn't aired his out in weeks. People have noticed. The ritual of laying out the futon also served as a transition, a way to mark the end of activity and the beginning of stillness. By physically unrolling your bed, you were telling your body, it's time to let go. There's something undeniably grounding about that. Folding your space back up each morning meant starting the day with intention. Unfolding it again each night meant returning to yourself. Quirkier still, some wealthier families hired futonya, futon merchants who went door to door offering cleaning, airing and even stuffing services. They'd haul your futon away for beating, steaming and fluffing, then return it like a fresh pastry. The elite took it further, commissioning seasonal futon covers embroidered with family crests or cherry blossoms. Your bed became an extension of your identity. And yet, despite the care, there's an absurdity to it. Your pillow is filled with buckwheat husks that sound like a rain stick. If you shift in your sleep, it crunches. Loudly. The Makura pillow is oddly small. barely supporting your head, let alone your sleep hygiene. Some people even use wooden headrests, the same kind geisha used to preserve their elaborate hairstyles overnight. Comfortable? Not remotely. But elegant? Absolutely. You lie on your back, or your side, never your stomach. That's considered bad form and, depending on who you ask, might attract wandering spirits. You stare up at the wooden ceiling beams, darkened by oil lantern smoke, humming faintly with the creaks and sighs of old lumber expanding in the cool night air. The room is sparse. There's no bedside table, no glass of water, just a folded cloth to wipe your brow, and maybe a sliver of bamboo fan if the weather's warm. Somewhere in a richer neighbourhood, a samurai household is also laying out its bedding, but with more formality. Their tatami mats are softer, their futons heavier, their pillows laced with cedar chips for aroma. They might even place a calligraphy scroll above the futon, a quiet prayer, a moral reminder, or a haiku from Basho himself. You think about your own scroll. It's hand-copied by your older cousin who fancies himself a poet. It reads, "The wind whispers low. In the stillness of my dreams, even cranes take rest." It's nice, you think. Even if he rhymed dreams with rest again, he's trying. As you nestle deeper into your futon, you notice the room has grown quieter. The streets are empty. The clappers of the Firewatch patrol fade into the distance. Someone's baby cries in a neighbouring house. A dog barks once, then falls silent. You're wrapped not just in cotton, but in the steady breath of an entire city turning in for the night. Futons in the Edo-period weren't luxury, they were necessity. They were also a paradox, impermanent, yet central. They folded into boxes but stretched across generations. They weren't just where you slept, they were where you recovered, grieved, laughed, dreamt. Historians still debate whether this nighttime minimalism was more practical than philosophical. Was it born of fire hazard fears, cultural values of impermanence, or the simple elegance of knowing that nothing, not even your bed, is forever? Whatever the answer, one thing remains true. Every fold in that futon is a story, and tonight you've just become part of it, so you're nestled into your futon. The cotton quilt is warm but breathable, the pillow makes its usual polite crackling sounds, and the floor creaks gently under the shifting weight of someone in the next room adjusting their own bedding. You'd think that would be enough, but no, because here's the thing. In Edo-era Japan, even sleepwear has a social structure, and tonight you're going to dress for slumber like it matters. The first rule, your nighttime clothes are not just leftover day clothes. Sleepwear is its own outfit, quiet, modest, and properly folded when not in use. You reach into a small lacquered chest and pull out your yukata, a lightweight cotton robe, somewhere between a bathrobe and a simplified kimono. It's soft, slightly faded from washing, and smells faintly of rice starch and the smoke from last week's bathhouse visit. As you slip into the yukata, you don't button anything. There are no buttons, just folds and ties. The left side always wraps over the right. The other way? That's for the dead. You don't want to tempt fate. Even if you're already horizontal, you tie it closed with a thin sash. No elaborate obi tonight. You're not going to a festival, you're going to bed. Now, if you're a merchant's daughter or a housemaid, your yukata might be plain indigo or striped. Simple, clean. But if you're higher up, say, the daughter of a samurai, you might have one with little crane patterns or subtle floral motifs. Just enough to whisper refined without screaming it. There's an art to that balance. Of course, men have their own version. A looser fit, slightly shorter sleeves, practical, sensible. One might even say boring, if not for the secret that some sleeves hide tiny stitched poems. Yes, it was a quiet trend. Sleep poetry, sewn into the seams of your nightclothes. Imagine rolling over and brushing your fingers against a line that reads, "Even the night wind holds its breath as we slumber beneath silent stars." A little drama with your dreams never hurt anyone. Some women, especially in aristocratic households, took bedtime fashion further. They wore layered robes, even to sleep, carefully chosen for seasonal colours and symbolic meaning. Peach tones for spring, rust and pine for autumn. You're not just dressing for comfort, you're aligning your dreams with the rhythm of nature, which, let's be honest, is more thoughtful than most of us manage on laundry day. And there were rules about what not to wear too. It was bad luck to sleep in garments associated with mourning or formal ceremony. If you were too poor to own multiple robes, some people would cleanse their only garment with rituals, incense or water steeped with sakaki leaves. Sleep required spiritual hygiene as well as physical. Now imagine you're a samurai, a man trained to fall asleep at a moment's notice, but rise instantly at the sound of a door creaking. Your sleeping yukata is chosen with intent. It allows freedom of movement in case you need to leap up in the middle of the night and defend your home. Your sword, of course, is laid beside you, wrapped in cloth to avoid accidents, and the scabbard tip points away from your body, just in case you roll over in your sleep and start a historical misunderstanding. Historians still argue whether samurai really slept lightly because of duty, or because their tatami rooms were just that uncomfortable. Either way, they stayed ready. You could say bedtime for them was just another form of vigilance. If you're a monk, your bedtime garment is different again. A simpler robe, often in muted earth tones. Monks sleep on thinner mats, or even wooden platforms. Their sleepwear reflects humility. No patterns, no embellishments, just clean lines, and a clean conscience. Of course, this doesn't stop some monasteries from having elaborate rituals around bedtime, complete with chants and prescribed posture. Yes, you might be required to sleep on your right side, knees bent, hand resting lightly over your heart. Enlightenment doesn't come from snoozing with your mouth open. In more urban households, particularly among the merchant class, bedtime clothes sometimes served as fashion flexes. Hosting a guest overnight, you might put on your second best yukata, subtly hinting at the existence of an even finer one. It's the 18th century equivalent of having guest towels embroidered with your initials. And let's not forget the children. Small yukatas, sometimes colour-coded by birth order or embroidered with animals for charm. Parents would fold them lovingly each night, whispering lullabies while tying tiny sashes. The youngest might sleep in a shared futon between siblings, each child's robe forming a rainbow of cotton across the tatami. You shift in your own bedding. Your yukata is a little loose at the collar now. It always slips like that. You adjust it absently, listening to the quiet rattle of a cicada outside. Someone in the next room coughs once and settles again. The room smells faintly of soap, starch, and something flowery. Perhaps plum blossom or dried chrysanthemum tucked inside someone's collar. It's a small moment. But here, in this precise and layered society, even your sleepwear communicates something. Respect, restraint, attention to season, mood, and occasion. You're not just getting dressed for sleep. You're preparing to leave the world gently and return in the morning with grace, which leads to the final touch, the sleep scarf. Yes, it exists. A strip of gauze or soft cotton wrapped around the neck or head, sometimes used to keep the hair neat, other times for warmth or modesty. It's tied lightly with a small knot. Decorative? Occasionally. But mostly it says, I have done all I can for today, and that's where you are now, resting, robed, ready. You close your eyes, the cotton of your sleeve resting against your cheek, the night air cooling your skin where the robe gapes slightly. You're not just asleep. You're appropriately, seasonally, socially asleep. It's late now. The world outside your shoji screen has gone quiet, save for the creak of a wooden eave and the distant drip of water into a ceramic gutter. Your futon is warm beneath you, your yukata slightly loosened at the collar, and your limbs have gone comfortably heavy. But sleep, in Edo-era Japan, isn't just a matter of lying down. It's something cultivated, layer by layer, scent by scent. In the corner of your room, a pale thread of smoke drifts upward. A stick of incense burns in a shallow clay dish, flickering slightly in the still air. It's not an accident. That's bedtime incense, a ritual in itself. You're not just perfuming your room, you're marking time, warding off spirits and inviting dreams. The scent, perhaps agarwood or sandalwood, is rich, woody, with a sweetness that hums at the edges. It sinks into the cotton of your futon, clings to your sleeves, and wraps itself around your pillow. You feel your breath slow, as though the smoke is doing the breathing for you now. This isn't a mere aesthetic choice. In Edo-era households, especially among the upper classes, incense played a precise and symbolic role in bedtime. It was used as a natural clock, a way to mark the passage of night before modern timepieces were widespread. The length of an incense stick, meticulously cut, could indicate how long one had been asleep. In some homes, incense timers even burned in sequence, with one stick lighting another, calibrated to last through the night. You could almost tell the time by the scent in the air, and if you're especially refined, or just particularly anxious, your futon might come with an incense pillow. Yes, that's real. A soft, rectangular headrest with sachets of dried herbs and crushed incense sewn inside. Lay your head on it, and you'll drift off to sleep with subtle fragrances drifting through your dreams. Clove, mugwort, bamboo ash, or even cinnamon. A different dream for every blend. Some believed these scents did more than relax. They guided your dreams. Sandalwood was said to usher in peaceful visions. Frankincense might draw forth ancestors. A hint of spikenard, earthy and rare, was rumoured to inspire romantic or prophetic dreams. You weren't just resting. You were preparing your mind for a journey, scented and symbolic. Of course, not every household had the means to indulge in such luxuries. A farmer's family might burn a twig of pine or cedar bark instead of expensive incense. A travelling merchant might keep a sliver of dried mandarin peel hidden in his sleeve to smell as he drifted off in a roadside inn. But even these simpler gestures carried meaning. The idea was always the same: to begin sleep with intention. Incense also served as a form of protection. Many in Edo believed that sleep was a vulnerable state, your body at rest, your soul wandering. Fragrant smoke, especially made with protective herbs like shiso or wormwood, was said to ward off evil spirits, bad dreams, and even illnesses. Superstition? Maybe. But in a time without medicine, where fevers could kill and dreams felt like messages, scent became armour. Even temples had their own version. In Buddhist monasteries, monks burned thick coils of incense through the night, the smoke curling through long wooden corridors, mingling with the scent of tatami and ink. For them, the act of listening to incense, yes, listening, was a meditative practice. You weren't just smelling it, you were becoming present to it. They called it kodo, the way of incense. In fact, kodo became an entire art form in aristocratic circles. People would gather for incense appreciation gatherings like tea ceremonies, but for the nose. Small wooden boxes held tiny chips of rare woods, some hundreds of years old. Guests would try to identify the scent, then share the dreams they experienced afterward. Think of it as a dream and sniff salon, with poetry and bragging rights. Some households kept dream scrolls too, miniature journals tucked beside their bedding where they could write down dreams the moment they woke. And the scent of last night's incense, often the first line of the entry. Clove and plumwood, dreamt of snow falling on a fire. A child laughed. I didn't recognise him. In Yoshiwara, the licensed pleasure district, incense was even more elaborate. Courtesans had signature scents, chosen carefully to reflect their persona. One might favour chrysanthemum and camphor, another rosewood and black tea. A client returning weeks later could identify a room simply by scent. And sometimes he'd request a certain blend, an attempt to recreate a night, or a fantasy, or a dream half remembered. Historians still debate the psychological effects of these incense rituals. Were the dreams truly shaped by scent? Or was it the association, the expectation, the anticipation of a world conjured through smell? Either way it worked, or at least it felt like it did. You inhale slowly. The scent is softer now. It's reaching the end of its stick. A little curl of ash droops, clings, then falls silently into the bowl. The room feels heavier. Or maybe you feel lighter. The difference blurs. Nearby, your neighbour knocks over something in their room. A kettle, perhaps. You hear a murmur of apology, then silence. The smoke continues to curl upward. It reminds you of a paper lantern rising into the sky, fading until it's part of the night. Even in the poorest households, where incense was too expensive to burn regularly, people found ways to scent their sleep. Boiling citrus peels, hanging bundles of herbs, even drying cherry blossoms and slipping them into the folds of futon cloth. Fragrance was memory. Fragrance was presence. And for those living in wooden homes that could burn down in an instant, it was also a way of leaving something behind that lingered. You glance at your incense bowl. The stick is now just ember. A faint glow. Then gone. Sleep takes its cue. You're not falling asleep into nothing. You're falling into something warm, fragrant, shaped by tradition, carried on scent. And when you wake up, tomorrow or in 100 years, you'll remember this room by its scent before you remember its name. Your eyes are still closed, but you can feel it. Your hair has come slightly undone. A few strands have escaped the wrap you so carefully tied before bed. They tickle your forehead and cling to your cheek. You reach up lazily to tuck them away, and, in doing so, you're reminded of something curious. In Edo-era Japan, going to sleep with unkempt hair wasn't just uncomfortable, it was borderline unacceptable. That's right. Welcome to the ritual of nighttime hair care, a nightly production that, depending on your social standing, could rival a tea ceremony in both complexity and importance. Let's start with the basics. You sit on the edge of your futon, robe loose, the air cool against your neck. Beside you is a low wooden box, your bintsukbako. Inside, a comb, a small cloth, a jar of fragrant oil, and, if you're especially stylish, a hairpin or two. These aren't random items, they're tools. And tonight, your head is the canvas. You dip your fingers into the oil, maybe camellia, maybe sesame, and work it gently through your hair. The scent is earthy, faintly floral, a little nutty. The oil does more than smooth. It nourishes, protects against lice, and keeps your scalp from turning into parchment during the long, dry winter nights. The comb comes next, long, wide-toothed, usually made of wood or tortoiseshell. You pull it slowly through your hair from crown to ends. The sound it makes is almost musical, like a soft sigh. For women, especially those of merchant or samurai families, hair care was taken seriously. Nighttime was when you let your elaborate daytime styles down, unpinning the buns, removing the ornaments, unravelling the wax twists. But even loose, your hair must be neat. You might braid it gently or wrap it in a cloth called a tokin to keep it from tangling. Letting it splay out wild was considered sloppy, and in some contexts associated with ghosts or illness. Yes, you heard that right. In Edo folklore, dishevelled hair at night was a visual shorthand for someone haunted, mad, or on the brink of death. Think of every yurei, the ghostly figures in white robes and long black hair that fall straight over their faces. That look wasn't random. It was an inversion of proper night grooming, a spectral warning that someone had slipped through the cracks of social order. So, if you're trying not to terrify your roommates or your ancestors tonight, you'll want to keep those strands tied neatly back. For men, things were a bit more shiny. The samurai chonmeiji, that famous top-knot style, wasn't just for daytime duels. Many samurai slept with their hair partially done to maintain its shape. Some even used a small wooden pillow, the takamakura, to avoid flattening the knot. It sounds uncomfortable because it absolutely was. Imagine trying to sleep with your head elevated on a block so your hairstyle stays flawless. Commitment, and don't get us started on the oil. Bintsuke abura, a pomade made from wax and scented oils, was used to sculpt the hair into position. It was sticky, it was heavy, and in summer, it melted just enough to cause problems. Pillows were often covered with protective cloths, small squares that could be washed separately because yes, you absolutely would sweat pomade into them overnight. But hair wasn't just about style, it was about identity. Your status, your age, even your marital situation could be read from how you wore your hair. Married women styled theirs differently than unmarried ones. Girls tied theirs in looser, more playful arrangements. A recently widowed woman might wear hers long and straight for a period of mourning, and at night these signals didn't go away, they just softened. You might loosen your bun, but you wouldn't take it down completely. You might let your fringe fall, but not over your eyes. There was dignity in every detail. Children had their own bedtime hair rituals too. Little girls often had their hair tied with silk ribbons or braided before bed to keep it from knotting. Boys, especially those from noble families, sometimes had their heads partially shaved in traditional patterns, which required maintenance and oiling. You'd see a mother gently combing her son's scalp while he fought sleep, blinking slowly at the oil lamp. Even in the bathhouses, the process continued. After soaking, patrons would gather in front of small mirrors, combing and rewrapping their hair in practiced motions. You weren't ready for bed until your hair said so. Historians still debate whether these grooming customs were purely practical, meant to ward off lice and maintain hygiene, or whether they were deeply embedded in spiritual symbolism. After all, hair has long been associated with life force across many cultures. In Edo Japan, cutting it could symbolize loss or transformation, so caring for it, even before sleep, felt sacred. And it wasn't always peaceful. Imagine summer nights, no air conditioning, a head full of wax. You'd lie there, trying to sleep while your hair slowly tried to rebel against gravity and good taste. If you were wealthy enough, you might hire a kamiui, a hairdresser, to redo your nighttime style before bed. Yes, people did that. There were even manuals, illustrated guides showing the correct steps to wrap, oil and protect your hair from the nightly chaos of sleep. You finish now. Your hair is smooth, tucked and wrapped in a soft cloth. You place the comb back into the box, give your scalp one last satisfying scratch, and settle under your quilt. The oil on your fingers lingers faintly as you adjust your pillow. You're not just clean, you're composed. The lantern flickers once, then calms. A breeze slips past the paper screen, and your freshly groomed hair rustles slightly against your sleeve. Sleep is close now. You've done everything right. And tomorrow, when you wake up and unwrap your cloth and run your fingers through your hair, you'll feel it. The calm, the care, the intention. It isn't just sleep. It's the art of resting beautifully. You lie in your futon, swaddled in cotton, tucked beneath a kakabuton that smells faintly of charcoal and cedar. The incense has long since burned out. The oil in your hair has cooled, and your yukata rests lightly over your collarbone. Everything should be perfect for sleep, but you're still very much awake. Not because you're uncomfortable, but because, in Edo-period Japan, silence isn't a luxury, it's a myth. You shift slightly, adjusting your buckwheat pillow with a soft rustle. A second later, you hear a nearly identical sound from the next room, someone else adjusting their pillow. You pause. Was it your brother? Your aunt? The neighbour's apprentice separated from you by just a few layers of paper and good intentions? That's the thing about life in Edo. Privacy doesn't exist, at least not the kind you know today. The walls around you aren't walls at all. They're paper screens stretched over wooden frames. Shoji and Fusuma. Beautiful, yes. Light, yes. And completely incapable of keeping a secret. You roll to your side and listen. A pot clinks in the kitchen. A cough echoes faintly through the hallway. Someone, probably old Mr. Kinoshita across the way, has begun his nightly ritual of clearing his throat 7 times in a row before lying down. You've counted. It's always 7. It's not just your household. The entire city sleeps like this. Families stacked in narrow townhouses called nagaya, arranged row upon row along the cobbled lanes of Edo. Each home thin and deep, a series of tatami rooms partitioned by sliding screens, where multi-generational families sleep side by side. Some with grandparents who snore, some with babies who don't understand the concept of sleep at all. The walls are thin, the roofs thinner, and yet somehow people make it work. It's not about blocking noise, it's about ignoring it. You learn early that not every sound is an invitation. The creak of a floorboard doesn't need acknowledgement. The soft murmur of 2 cousins whispering about someone's new kimono is met with polite indifference. You master the art of being present without intruding. Social silence becomes an internal discipline, a form of nighttime respect. You pretend not to hear. You fold your awareness inward, like origami, until it becomes a quiet space just for you, even if the walls around you are practically see-through. Now, if you're lucky, or wealthy, your sleeping quarters might be more separated. A merchant's house or a minor samurai's residence might afford thicker fusuma, maybe even multiple rooms. But even these houses operate with shared acoustics. There's always someone in the next room, a child, a maid, a brother-in-law visiting unexpectedly for the week who hums tunelessly in his sleep. You listen now to that hum. It's soft, off-key, and strangely comforting. You imagine the man lying there, mouth slightly open, his legs probably taking up more futon space than necessary. And you smile, because in this moment, your sleep is part of something bigger, a quiet, buzzing beehive of dreams. Some nights it gets loud. Thunderstorms roll in off the bay. Rats skitter across roof beams. Drunken revellers pass down the street, laughing too loudly, stomping sandal-clad feet. If you live near Yoshiwara, the licensed pleasure district, you might even hear music, or laughter with a slightly broken edge. But no one storms out yelling. No one slams a door. That would draw attention. The one thing worse than noise is being the person who complains about it. That's why, in most households, people go to bed with quiet rituals. Soft footfalls, measured voices. If you must speak, you do it with a whisper and a hand cupped near your mouth. If you must laugh, you let the sound escape through your nose, barely audible. You respect the structure of the house, the way sound moves through it like wind. Even children eventually learn this code. After a few sharp shushes from parents, a few days of being told people are sleeping, they start to pad around like little ghosts barely shifting the air. Babies, of course, get a pass, and even their cries are met not with frustration, but with acceptance. Because noise is inevitable. The response is what matters. Historians still debate how the lack of privacy shaped Edo society. Some say it made people more communal, more tolerant. Others argue it led to repression, an enforced politeness that stifled emotion. But in either case, it created a world where being considerate was not a choice, it was survival. You turn back to your other side. A moth brushes against the paper window. You hear it land and flutter. A soft giggle comes from somewhere down the hall. Someone dreaming? Someone not asleep yet? You'll never know, and you'll never ask. Even in the wealthiest homes, nighttime privacy was partial. Servants often slept in corridors or in small partitioned areas just behind screens. You could hear them breathing, shuffling, sometimes quietly singing lullabies to themselves. In temples, monks slept in communal halls, their breathing rising and falling in unison like a tide. In rural homes, peasants slept side by side, parents with children, everyone under a single quilt in winter just to stay warm. You were never alone. You were part of a breathing organism, and over time, the noise becomes background music. You begin to need it. Total silence would feel eerie, wrong even. If the house didn't creak or someone didn't cough, or the dog didn't snore faintly from under the porch, you might lie awake wondering what's missing. You learn to fall asleep to the sounds of others, to let their presence wrap around you like a second blanket. Sometimes, late at night, someone will be writing. You'll hear the brush sliding across paper, suri-suri, and know that a student is copying a scroll or a shopkeeper is balancing the day's accounts. And even that somehow soothes you. There's something reassuring about someone else being awake while you're not. You're alone, and yet never alone. Sleeping, and yet part of a collective sigh that rolls through the city like morning mist. You let out a breath. It joins the others. The screen flutters. The moth rests. The writing stops. And finally you drift off. Not despite the noise, but because of it. You lie in your futon, warm and still beneath the kakebuton, the weight of sleep beginning to press gently against your limbs. Your yukata is soft against your skin. The hairscarf you tied hours ago has stayed in place. Your body has done its part, prepared, oiled, settled. But your mind, still stirring, and not because of noise. No, this time it's something quieter, older. Because in Edo-era Japan, as the last glow of the lantern fades and the incense turns to ash, another question floats through the dark. What else is here? Not who, but what? The night isn't just for sleep, it's for spirits. You've already performed the basics. Your pillow is facing the right way, never toward the door. That would be inviting death. Your sandals are placed neatly beside your futon, side by side, not crossed. You placed a tiny mound of salt near the doorframe just in case. These are normal things. Quiet acts of defense passed down from your grandmother and her grandmother before her. Because tonight, like every night, you sleep with the invisible. In the Edo period, bedtime wasn't just a time for dreams, it was a crossing, a threshold. You close your eyes in this world and open them into another, and while some people dream of rivers and rice fields, others wake with the memory of cold breath on their neck or a name whispered in a voice they've never heard before. These aren't just stories. They're warnings disguised as folklore. Start with the yurei, ghosts, but not like in stories from the West. Edo ghosts are elegant and terrifying. White funeral robes, long black hair, and a stillness that wraps the room in tension. They appear silently. Sometimes they drift. Sometimes they hover. Sometimes they kneel at the foot of your futon and stare until you wake, your body frozen in place, unable to speak or move. We call that kanashibari, sleep paralysis. But back then, people knew better. It wasn't your nerves. It was something watching. To prevent such a visit, you clutch your tiny charm, a folded piece of parchment worn soft by nightly touch. On it, a symbol brushed in dark ink. Maybe it's the kanji for protection. Maybe it's an esoteric character known only to the priest who sold it to your mother at the temple gate. Either way, it sits under your pillow like a quiet bodyguard. Outside, the wind picks up slightly. You hear a bamboo fence creak. You pull the kakebuton up to your chin. Not every spirit wants harm. Some, it's said, simply want to be noticed. A lonely soul without descendants might wander, seeking anyone to remember their name, which is why, if you dream of a pale stranger asking directions, you're supposed to light incense in the morning, pour a bowl of water, say a name, any name, even if you make it up. Just give them something to answer to. Then there are the mischief makers. You've heard of them. Makura geishi, pillow flippers. Strange spirits that slip into homes and spin your pillow around while you sleep. Not harmful exactly, but unnerving. If you wake with your head turned the wrong way, it's a sign, an omen, a warning from something that doesn't speak in words. And worse, if they really like you, they might sit on your chest and watch you sleep. The old remedies help. Place a sprig of shiso leaf under your pillow. Keep a piece of iron nearby. A needle, a sewing hook, something small. Spirits don't like iron, or so the tales go. Say a prayer. Make the sign in the air. You don't have to believe. Just respect the rules. Children were said to be especially vulnerable. Too open. Too curious. Too bright in the eyes of the dark. That's why mothers embroidered protective charms into their sleeping robes. Little cranes, tiny pine trees, symbols for long life, good dreams, and barriers against the uninvited. Some mothers would stay awake an extra hour after putting their child to bed just to watch, just in case. And then there are the Baku. The Baku, the dream eaters. Not a threat, but a last resort. You've had a bad dream. You wake with sweat at your collar and a taste of salt in your mouth. You sit up, heart pounding, and whisper, "Baku-san, come eat my dream." You only get one chance. The Baku comes quickly, part elephant, part lion, part myth, and devours the bad dream before it can settle. But you must be careful. Call the Baku too often, and it may begin eating more than nightmares. It might take your hopes, your wishes, your little secret prayers whispered in the dark, so you use it wisely, only when it's truly needed. People kept illustrations of Baku near their beds. A painted scroll, a carved charm, sometimes just the word etched into wood. A reminder that fear has a name, and sometimes a remedy. In wealthier households, the defences grew elaborate. Incense made with wormwood or mugwort said to purify the space. Tiny bells placed on shelves. Sound drives away what doesn't belong. A cup of rice left outside the door just in case a passing spirit gets hungry and decides to move along instead of moving in. In temples, the monks had chants, soft words spoken in rhythm, like breath. Their futons were thinner, their beds harder, but their minds calmer. They slept beneath scrolls of sutras and beside flickering lamps that never fully went out. Even the dark feared their silence. And you? You're just one more sleeper, tucked into a narrow room, head resting over old wood and paper. But you've done everything right. You've made your offerings. You've tied your charm. You've closed your eyes with humility, not arrogance. So when the floor creaks, just once, and a shadow slips past your screen and vanishes without a sound, you don't panic. You breathe. You wait. You believe in the strength of small protections. You're not alone. You are part of a long, ancient line of dreamers, each one surrounded by stories, symbols, and invisible shields. You sleep with the knowledge that the dark has rules, and tonight you followed everyone. You're lying in your futon, arms tucked in, legs slowly warming beneath layers of cotton. The floor beneath you creaks now and then, old wood adjusting to the night's cooling air. Your breathing has slowed, your eyes are heavy, but before you can drift off completely, your thoughts do something strange. They wander beyond your room, beyond your neighbourhood, beyond even Edo itself. They drift into the countryside, because the way you sleep here, in the busy heart of the city, with your fragrant incense and your paper screens and your buckwheat pillow, is not the only way people sleep in this land. Out there, past the rice fields and winding streams, is a different kind of bedtime. One that smells like wood smoke and fermented straw. One where walls are made of packed earth, and roofs sag a little in the middle. This is the world of the Edo peasant, and their version of night is just as carefully constructed, though far less adorned. Let's visit them for a while. Picture a one-room farmhouse in a tiny village. It's late. The fire pit in the centre of the floor has been reduced to glowing embers. There are no lanterns, just the soft light of the moon filtering through gaps in the wooden shutters. The house is quiet except for the rhythmic creak of the beams as they cool. Everyone is asleep already, or trying to be. The whole family shares this single room. A married couple, 2 children, a grandmother, and maybe an uncle visiting from the next village. The floor is a hard, tamped earth, cold in winter, dusty in summer. But near the hearth, a straw mat has been spread, thin and a little uneven, like sleeping on a thatched roof turned upside down. This is your bed. There is no shiki-button, no quilted mat stuffed with cotton. Those are luxuries of the city. What you have is straw, sometimes padded with old fabric or discarded clothes, and a wool or cotton blanket that's been patched so many times it looks like a map of some forgotten archipelago. Pillows? Maybe a log of wood wrapped in cloth, or just your own folded arm. But here's what's remarkable. Even this sparse arrangement follows its own quiet order. Before bed, the mat is swept clean, the blanket is shaken out and refolded. A small offering, rice or water or salt, is left on the family altar, just a shelf with a paper talisman above it. You don't sleep in chaos, you sleep in structure, you sleep in respect. The children sleep closest to the parents, their small bodies curled up like kittens. The grandmother lies near the hearth, where it's warmest. In summer, everyone turns their heads toward the door to catch whatever breeze might sneak in. In winter, they all face the fire, sharing body heat under one shared covering. No one sleeps alone. And here's where things get even more interesting. Even in these modest homes, sleep rituals persist. A whispered prayer, a check of the charm above the door, salt at the threshold to keep out wandering spirits. Some families draw a line in ash around the sleeping space to confuse anything, other that might try to wander in. Because yes, spirits visit the countryside too. And unlike in the city where you might buy a charm from a temple stall, here you rely on old stories, inherited practices, and things whispered over soup. Some rural households hang bundles of dried mugwort or garlic above the bed. Others burn pine needles before sleep. The smell is sharp, cleansing, and just pungent enough to make something supernatural think twice. And dreams? Oh, dreams matter here. A good dream might mean a healthy harvest. A bad one, illness, misfortune. So, people remember, they discuss, they compare. The old woman down the lane who dreamt of red koi swimming in a bucket. Her son got married that spring, the black-haired boy who dreamt of the sun rising in the west. He broke his leg chasing a rabbit. Dreams here are omens dressed in symbols, and so the countryside sleeps, not with comfort, but with meaning. Even when the wind cuts through the walls and the snow settles on the thatched roof, people wrap themselves tighter and keep dreaming. Now, back in the city, in your warm futon, you might feel a tinge of guilt, or maybe just a strange kinship, because while your bedding is softer, your rituals are not so different. You too face your feet away from the door. You too place a charm near your head. You too pause before closing your eyes. You're not so far from them after all. Even among the samurai, sleeping arrangements weren't opulent. A warrior might have had a finer futon, yes, and perhaps a guard stationed nearby. But still, he lay on tatami, wrapped in a modest robe with his sword within arm's reach. Readiness was part of the posture. In temples, monks slept in lines, straight-backed, still robed, no tossing and turning. Their mats were thinner, their pillows firmer, their dreams quieter. They didn't fear spirits, but they respected them. They chanted softly before bed, not to protect themselves, but to guide whatever unseen things drifted through. And in the Nagaya, the city's shared row houses, artisans and labourers unfolded their mats in narrow corridors, their beds tucked between toolboxes and hanging laundry. Sleep was brief, but essential. Tomorrow's work started at sunrise. All across Edo and its provinces, people found rest in unlikely places, on straw, on wood, under eaves and near fire pits. Sleep wasn't private, it wasn't luxurious, but it was shared, structured and sacred. Historians still debate whether people in the Edo-period got enough rest. With long work hours, dim lighting and crowded homes, it's hard to say. But what's clear is that sleep was never taken for granted. It was prepared for. You turn now, curling onto your side. Your quilt shifts, your breathing deepens. Somewhere out in the countryside, a farmer wraps himself in his patched blanket, and a child tucks their toes under their mother's legs. And you, separated by distance but not by ritual, join them in stillness. This is how a nation dreams, together. Somewhere beyond the lantern-lit alleys and temple courtyards of Edo, nestled behind red-painted gates and draped in the delicate perfume of camellia oil and incense, lies a world unto itself, Yoshiwara. You've likely heard the name before, maybe whispered in a poem, maybe carved into the wood of an old block print. But tonight, you're not just a visitor. You live here. You're inside this world. And in this strange corner of the city, even sleep wears makeup. Let's begin with your room. The sliding screens are hand-painted with swirls of gold leaf clouds and plum blossoms in bloom. The floor is tatami, yes, but there's an extra silk mat beneath your futon, bright red, soft as breath. The walls don't echo with silence. They thrum with distance. Distant laughter, distant footsteps, distant echoes of songs you sang hours earlier for a guest whose name you already don't remember. You're a courtesan. Or at least, you live and work within the quarters of Yoshiwara. You might be famous. You might be rising. You might be exhausted. And you're always dressed. Until now. It's after midnight. The last guest has gone. The perfumes have faded. You sit in front of a mirror, or something like it, a polished brass plate. You begin the sacred undoing of the day. First, the hair, massive, sculpted, shellacked into architectural submission. You remove the decorative pins one by one, gold, tortoiseshell, carved ivory. Your scalp sighs in relief. You loosen the waxed strands, still smelling faintly of smoke and sakura. You press warm oil into your temples. The sharp lines of the geisha vanish. What remains is just you. Next, the kimono. You untie the obi, that glorious suffocating sash at your waist. It drops with weight, nearly knocking over your pillow. You laugh. No one hears it. The underlayers come next. The juban, the slip, the padded collar. You fold each one meticulously, muscle memory guiding your hands like choreography you've done since girlhood. Beneath it all, your skin is marked faintly by seams, creases from fabric that's been tied too tightly for too long. You touch your shoulder, and it doesn't quite feel like yours. That's the price of transformation. You wear beauty like armor. Now, you set it aside. You reach for your sleep robe, a plain yukata, light cotton, dyed with faded blue cranes. No embroidery, no trailing sleeves, just softness. You tie it with a simple sash. And for the first time today, your breath doesn't have to match someone else's rhythm. It can just be yours. But bedtime here, even stripped of costume, still follows its own etiquette. You kneel beside your futon, smooth the shikibuton, fold back the kekibuton, place your headrest. Yes, still a lacquered block beneath a folded towel. You lie down with your hands resting gently over your stomach, legs together, chin tilted slightly. Not because anyone's watching, but because form is habit, and habit is a kind of safety. The room is still now. The noise of the outer corridors has faded. The distant shamisen has gone quiet, but your mind is anything but still. Because Yoshiwara doesn't sleep the way the rest of Edo does. It shimmers even in the dark. You think of the other women sleeping nearby. In the next room, the Oran who taught you how to knot your obi just so. She's probably already asleep, perfectly still, hair wrapped in cloth. In the attic above, the attendants sleep three to a mat, whispering gossip even as they drift off. Further down, a child cries once, then is hushed. In a city of luxury, someone is always awake. Your dreams don't come easily. You've had to learn how to guide them. Some women here whisper poetry before bed, hoping for dreams of love or distant landscapes. Others trace the outline of their pillow with a finger, calling on old memories to comfort them. And some, like you, just lie very still and let sleep come when it chooses. Because when your days are filled with artifice, dreams are the only place that doesn't ask for anything. Still, you have your protections. A tiny pouch, hidden beneath your futon filled with dried chrysanthemum petals. A folded paper charm tucked into your sleeve. A memory of your mother's voice repeating a lullaby you haven't heard in 10 years, but remember as if it was sung this evening. You remember how she used to tie your robe for you at bedtime, how she brushed your hair in long even strokes. She's far away now, maybe gone. But in this room, with your makeup off and your feet cold under the quilt, you are suddenly her child again. There's a belief in Yoshiwara that dreams mean more than they do outside the gate. Dreams here are layered, just like robes. They're symbolic, sometimes indulgent, sometimes predictive. A dream of floating? You might be about to change rank. A dream of water? Perhaps a letter is coming. A dream of red chrysanthemums? Love or danger? Maybe both. You've had all of those. Last week you dreamt you were walking across a bridge made of hair, each strand humming with voices. You woke with tears on your cheek and no idea why. Historians argue whether the lives of courtesans in Edo were empowered or imprisoned, whether they were artists or captives. But maybe that's the wrong question. Maybe it's not what they were, it's how they endured. And for many the answer was simple. Nightfall. In sleep there's no rank, no makeup, no obi. Just you, your breath, and a pillow that finally doesn't smell like powder and expectation. You glance at the candle, the flame dances once, then softens. The room cools. You draw the quilt up to your chin and close your eyes. Outside, someone starts laughing in the alley and someone else shushes them. Then silence. You're no longer a courtesan. Not here, not now. You're just a girl in a yukata, under a quilt, floating between memory and meaning. You fall asleep like a poem being erased gently, line by line, and somewhere a dream is waiting to unfold. In many parts of Edo, bedtime arrives like a soft collapse. After a long day of labour, rice planting, fish gutting, merchant haggling, or ceremonial bowing, people lie down and vanish into futons like ink disappearing into washi paper. But not everyone drifts off so quickly. For some, especially among the literati, monks, low-ranking samurai or solitary teachers, sleep is something earned through ritual, thought, and ink. Tonight, you're one of them. You're a minor scholar, perhaps, a tutor to the son of a rice broker, or a writer who dreams of finishing a travelogue but keeps getting distracted by thoughts of clouds and koi and metaphors about wind. You live in a humble townhouse tucked behind a stationery shop, your sliding door half broken and your inkstone sitting permanently on your desk like a shrine to the unsaid. Your home smells like paper, old ash, and camellia oil. It's quiet here. There's no wife or child snoring beside you, no grandmother clearing her throat or a neighbour's sandals clacking across the hall, just the rustling of shoji in the wind and the occasional crackle from the brazier in the corner, barely warm now, more symbolic than functional. And yet you're still awake. Not because you're troubled, not because of noise, but because you haven't yet performed your final act of the day, writing. This is your pre-sleep ritual. Not brushing your teeth, those you still chew clean with twigs. Not combing your hair, you already tied it back. No, for you, rest comes only after ink. You sit cross-legged on your tatami mat, a folded zabuton cushion under your knees. Your calligraphy brush is light in your hand, the bristles slightly stained from the ink you mixed this morning. Beside it rests a sheet of rice paper, its surface clean, vulnerable, whispering a kind of invitation. You dip the brush, breathe in, then begin. Tonight you write a single character. Yume, dream. You trace it slowly, deliberately. The long left stroke, the upward hook, the balanced centre. You write it again and again. Each time a little different. Each time a little quieter. This isn't study. This is meditation. Each stroke pushes your thoughts a little further from the day behind you. You don't write to impress. You write to empty. Some nights you copy poems, other nights just your own name, over and over, until it looks unfamiliar and abstract, until the weight of it feels like smoke. Among Edo's educated men, this kind of nightly calligraphy is common. The bunjin, or literati, treat brushwork like breathwork. It's not a test of skill, but of stillness. Writing before bed is like combing the mind, straightening what's tangled, loosening what's tight. Some say this practice sharpens your dreams. Others say it's a form of prayer, less to the gods and more to yourself. You pause now to rub your wrist. Rub. It's stiff, sore from days spent teaching difficult pupils how to hold a brush properly. You glance at the candle. Its flame has burned low, the wax puddling like a fallen moon. You take your final sheet of paper, fold it twice, and tuck it beneath your futon. Not for safekeeping, just to feel the weight of it there, like a thought waiting to bloom while you sleep. Then you clean the brush, slowly, with the care of someone tending a delicate instrument or perhaps a pet. You wipe the excess ink onto a cloth, dip the brush in water, and place it on the wooden holder beside the inkstone. The room smells faintly of ink and ash now, faintly of memory. You lie down. The futon is cool. The cotton quilt rustles as you pull it over your chest. Your pillow crackles faintly. buckwheat husks adjusting to your weight. You fold your hands over your stomach, eyes open, staring at the ceiling beams above you. They're dark with age, lined with old spiderwebs you'll never reach. You begin again, this time, in your mind. Stroke by stroke, you write the kanji without moving your hand. You visualize it, building each line in perfect silence. Horizontal, vertical, flick, curve. One character, then another. You trace the poetry of breath in symbols. There's a word for this, yumeji food, dream brush. It's a tradition among monks and scholars, a mental practice of drawing characters in the mind as one falls asleep. Some believe it improves memory, others say it guides dreams. A few claim it keeps the demons of restlessness at bay. You believe in it because it works. Tonight, you start with Yume, then Shizuka, quiet, then Sora, sky, words that feel good inside your head. You don't force them, you let them arrive. And with them, memories come too. You remember the first time you copied the tale of Genji sitting under a leaking roof, your teacher's voice soft with age. You remember the way he whispered the passage about moonlight falling on a sleeping woman's sleeve and how he cried, just a little, because the sentence was too beautiful to bear. You remember writing a poem for a girl who sold pickled plums near the bridge. She never read it. You never gave it. But the writing of it, that was enough. You remember the scroll you ruined once by sneezing mid-stroke and how your master laughed instead of scolding you. Even the wind writes, he said. You still don't know what he meant. These thoughts don't disturb you. They pass through gently, like cranes moving across an empty sky. You've read somewhere that calligraphy is not about the ink. It's about the space around it, the quiet between the strokes. That's where the meaning lives. Maybe sleep is the same. You hear your housemate cough once in the next room. You forgot he was home. You wonder what he's dreaming about. Probably dumplings. Somewhere outside, a night watchman calls the hour Gyotsudoki, the fourth bell of the night. It's late, or early, depending on how you measure time. You roll to your side, the paper beneath your futon crinkling faintly. You smile. Not because of the noise, because of the comfort, because you are ready. The ink in your mind has begun to fade. The strokes dissolve. The characters fall apart into curves and dots, and finally, nothing at all. You no longer see the page, you are the page. And the dream begins, not with a picture, but with a single floating line. A brushstroke without form, moving across a sky made of sleep. By now, the hush of night has fully settled over Edo. The lanterns on the street have gone dim, one by one. The cicadas outside your window have slowed their rhythm, replaced by the occasional click of wooden beams cooling under the weight of the evening air. You've washed, written, folded your robe just so. You've adjusted your pillow, performed your rituals. But there's one companion left, one quiet, flickering friend that refuses to rush. The lamp. You're not staring at it, not exactly. But it's there, soft and steady in the corner of your small room. The lamp's body is made from ceramic, the glaze crackled and browned from years of use. A bowl of rapeseed oil sits inside, and in it, a floating wick gently draws its final sips of fuel. It's a dim light, not even enough to read by anymore. But that's not its purpose now, because in Edo-period Japan, the lamp wasn't just about seeing, it was about timing. This flickering flame, this humble, trembling eye of light, it's your hourglass, your clock, your curtain call. When it goes out, so does the day. You turn to your side and let your eyes rest on it. You don't need to rush. You've seen this ritual before. The lamp has its own pace, and it teaches you yours. Its flame leans to one side, then recovers. It brightens slightly when a breeze slips through the screen. It responds to the room like a living thing, breathing, dancing, waiting. Wealthy households in Edo might have owned candles marked with lines, primitive timepieces where each notch indicated the passage of half an hour. But even then, the standard way of counting the end of the day was simpler, quieter, and more poetic, watching the oil lamp burn low. You begin to think about your neighbours. In the next Nagaya, maybe the carpenter has just finished repairing his tools and now sits in silence, polishing the handle of a chisel as his own lamp gutters. Or perhaps the midwife 2 doors down is preparing to doze, her lamp reflecting softly in the steel of her scissors, always ready for a knock at midnight. Everyone, it seems, has their own way of watching the flame. In a world without electric clocks or digital alarms, fire governed everything. Cooking, writing, working, and resting. Oil was expensive after all. Every drop had purpose. That small pool in your lamp, it was measured with intent. Enough for a letter, a few pages of a book, a bowl of tea, and, most importantly, enough for the soul to unwind, gently, in its own time. You close your eyes for a moment but keep the flicker in your mind. You remember how, as a child, you used to watch your grandmother do this. She'd sit at the end of her futon, arms folded neatly in her lap, back perfectly straight. She'd stare at the lamp like it was a teacher, and in a way, it was. The flame knows when to go, she'd say, so you don't have to decide. Back then it seemed mystical. Now it seems like grace. The wick has begun to curve. It's shrunk, barely holding shape. The oil around it has thinned to a shallow gleam, and the glass cover, if you have one, fogs faintly with soot. The flame bobs lower with each breath of the room, and you wonder, not for the first time, who lights the lamp that burns in the dreams of Edo. Because dreams too need a bit of guidance, and that's what this moment is. A threshold, a bridge, a small flame guiding you across the river of sleep. There's an old saying from the period, Tomoshibi wa yume no mishishirube. The lamp is the guidepost of dreams. People used to say it when ending a letter at night, or when tucking in a child. It wasn't just poetic, it was comforting. The flame lights your path to the unconscious, to a place where old friends return and unsent letters get read, and wishes take the form of cranes flying over moonlit water. In some temples, monks keep lamps burning all night, not for sight but for presence. They call it Fusho no Hai, the unending fire. It represents the eternal watchfulness of enlightenment, the silent vigilance that doesn't sleep even when all else does. You once visited such a temple in your youth. The lamp was tiny, cradled in brass, and yet it filled the room with a stillness so profound it made your voice catch in your throat. You think of that now as your own flame dips lower. Some homes hang small charms above their lamps, prayers written on paper slips, pinned to the wooden stand. Others place a pinch of salt near the base, superstition maybe. But in Edo, the sacred and the ordinary live side by side. Even the act of refilling a lamp is in some ways a kind of offering. Tonight, you didn't add extra oil. You didn't intend to stay awake this long, but here you are, still watching. And now the moment is close. The flame grows thin, almost transparent. It wavers, not nervously, but peacefully, like someone bowing before leaving a room. You don't need to blow it out, you never do. Letting it die on its own feels right. It feels like trusting the rhythm of something older than you. The wick gives one final shiver. Then, softly, so softly, it disappears. Darkness folds over you like a second quilt. No fanfare, no snap, no lingering glow, just quiet. And in that quiet, you exhale. You're surprised how warm the room still feels. Even with the flame gone, its memory lingers. You can almost see its shape behind your eyelids, that final arc of light tracing itself like calligraphy on the ceiling of your mind. This, you realize, is the moment everyone shares. From the poorest peasant in the countryside to the wealthiest merchant in Nihonbashi, every night ends the same way. A single, flickering flame bowing into nothing. And when it does, sleep steps forward. It's not a leap, not a fall, it's a glide, like drifting down a river where the water knows exactly where to take you. You adjust your quilt one last time. Your fingers find the edge, pull it to your collar. The straw beneath the tatami creaks faintly. And all around you, the night breathes. Edo has gone dark, and you, small and still, have joined its rhythm. It is the hour when the city feels most ancient. You wouldn't know the time exactly, not by any clock anyway, but you feel it, in your bones, in the hush that drapes over Edo like the thinnest veil. You're not quite awake, not entirely asleep. You're drifting, hovering between two worlds, the one you can touch and the one you can only feel. This is Ushimitsu Doki, the hour of the ox, somewhere between 2 and 4 a.m. It's when the air is coldest, the silence deepest, and the human mind most porous to dreams, to fears, and to the kind of thoughts that don't come during the day. It is not quite night anymore, but it is not yet morning. In this hour, you are aware of things that make no sound. The weight of your quilt on your chest, the stiffness in your shoulder from lying still too long, the subtle pressure of your head against the buckwheat pillow, the faint scent of old incense lingering in your robe, barely perceptible until now, and something else, something harder to name. The kind of presence, not threatening, not loud, just there. Edo has its ghosts, yes, but not all ghosts are tragic. Some are just echoes of people who used to light the same kind of lamp you did, who folded their quilts the same way, who whispered into the dark for the same reasons. You remember hearing stories as a child, eerie tales told by the hearth, spirits who drift in during this sacred hour, looking for warmth, for unfinished conversations, for someone who might remember their name. They never hurt anyone, not really, but even now, all grown, all reasoned, you never sleep with your face turned toward a mirror, just in case. You roll onto your side, your knee shifts under the quilt, you inhale, the house does not creak. That's part of what makes this hour so strange. Even the house is still. Yet, somewhere outside, someone is awake. You hear it, the hyoshigi, those distinctive clappers of the night watchman. Clack, 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 a pattern older than memory. The sound of someone walking the alleys with a wooden staff, checking for fire, checking for safety. Letting you know that someone somewhere is watching the night while you rest. The Edo watchmen were many things: guards, neighbours, poor men given small stipends and large responsibilities. But in this hour they are monks with woodblocks, keepers of rhythm, soothers of the collective unconscious. You smile, just slightly, hearing them fade into the distance. Someone else is watching the night. That means you don't have to. But not all of Edo sleeps in these hours. No, far from it. The tofu vendor is already stirring, boiling the morning's batch. The baker is kneading rice flour, preparing the mochi cakes he'll sell at first light. At the Sumida River, fishermen pull nets from their boats in practiced silence, steam rising off the water like ghosts of their ancestors. In a row house not far from yours, a woman rocks her infant, half singing a lullaby that only the walls can hear. She doesn't know the lyrics anymore, just the melody. And the baby doesn't mind. The baby, like the hour, doesn't need language, only presence. And in a temple somewhere, deep in the hills outside the city, a bell rings. You don't hear it, not physically, but you feel the echo of it, as if a great metal bowl has been struck, and the vibration has passed into the soil beneath your floor. The monks are awake now. Their chanting begins before light. They are the first to greet the new day, even if the sun is still dreaming. You wonder briefly what they dream about, if monks are even allowed to. Historians still discuss the significance of Ushimitsu Doki. Was it superstition that kept people respectful of this hour? Or was it intuition? A bodily knowing that this moment is unlike the rest. That between the warmth of night and the motion of morning there lies a door. And you tonight are lying right beside it. You shift again. Not out of discomfort, but something like curiosity. Your hand grazes the edge of your futon, finds the folded paper beneath it, the one you wrote on earlier, before bed. You'd almost forgotten. The ink is dry by now, but its memory presses into your palm. You don't even need to look at the page to remember the word you wrote. Yum. Dream. It's fitting, really. You close your eyes and begin to drift again. Not into dreams, not yet. Into that peculiar mental hallway where thoughts echo like footsteps in an empty bathhouse. Where your mind offers you images like small offerings on an altar. You see yourself in a boat, alone, gliding through a narrow canal in the dark. Paper lanterns float beside you, casting long shadows on the water. You don't row. The boat moves on its own. You don't know where it's going. You don't need to. You see a pine tree, one you've never climbed, but know intimately. You hear a child's voice, though you haven't seen a child all day. You see a koi leap from a garden pond and vanish into a cloud. These are the kinds of almost dreams the people of Edo understood deeply. They didn't need Freud or Jung. They had Yugen, a word that means mystery, depth, the profound elegance of the unseen. It's the dream before the dream, the beauty you can't name, only feel, and right now you are floating in it. In this city made of wood and wind, of firelight and paper, you are one among thousands, all asleep, all resting, all waiting for the faint grey bloom of morning to peel back the sky. Even the ghosts have settled now. Even the watchmen have rounded the last corner. Even the dog that barked earlier has curled into its shadow. And you're almost there. Your breath slows, your chest rises, falls. The quilt is warm, the floor is still, the lamp is long extinguished. Nothing stirs. Not because the night is empty, but because it is full and content. Full of stories being dreamt. Full of ink drying beneath pillows. Full of memories being quietly polished in the dark. You are a small part of it, and you are safe. Let the ox pass, let the rooster wait. You're still floating, still dreaming, still being gently and visibly carried. Something has shifted. You don't open your eyes yet, but you feel it in the air. The shadows in your room are a little less heavy. The silence that once felt thick and unmovable has softened at the edges. There's a different weight to the darkness now, less like a blanket, more like a veil. Morning hasn't arrived. Not fully, but it's on its way. You sense it the way you might sense someone standing just outside the door, close enough to change the room. Your body stirs slowly. A foot stretches beneath the quilt. Your fingers flex and the tips catch the chill in the air. You take a breath, not deep, not forced, just enough to register the quiet hum that has replaced the deep silence of the Ushimitsu Doki, the hour of the ox. This is that strange in-between space, just before dawn, but long after midnight. A time Edo people knew intimately. It doesn't have a precise name like some hours do, but it's recognizable. It's when the city holds its breath before it begins again. In Edo, this moment marked more than just a new day. It marked a shift in rhythm. Night watchmen were returning to their homes. Lanterns were being snuffed. Street vendors, still wrapped in their bedding, stirred to prepare the first trays of rice cakes or miso soup. You hear it now, soft footsteps in the alley beyond your paper wall, the faint rattle of a shutter being drawn open a crack. Your eyes remain closed. You don't need to look. You can feel the light coming. In your room, everything is still in place. The inkstone on your desk, the crumpled towel by your pillow, the futon, slightly warm from your breath and body, remains your small island of stillness. You haven't spoken in hours, and you don't miss it. There's a rare peace in waking this slowly without expectation, without the sharpness of urgency. In Edo-period Japan, mornings were often structured but gentle. For many, there was no jarring start. No loud alarms or flashing screens. The body woke with the sky. You listened, and the world told you when to rise. A rooster crows in the distance now, not loudly, just once, testing the morning, as if asking whether it's time yet. A response comes from another rooftop, then another. The call moves across the district like a chain of yawns, not hurried, just acknowledged. In richer households, servants would already be moving, silently setting kettles over coals, preparing the first tray of the day with folded cloths, small lacquer bowls, and a delicate cup of warm tea. But in your humble room, there are no servants, only your hands, only your own quiet routine. You open your eyes just slightly, enough to catch the first hints of grey filtering through the paper screens. The edges of the room are visible now, soft lines, faint shadows. You can make out the wooden beam above you, the corner of the desk, the robe you folded the night before, still resting with intent beside your futon. You don't rise, not yet, because in Edo the act of rising carried meaning. People did not leap from their bedding, they eased into wakefulness. They acknowledged the night that carried them before setting it aside. So you lie still and think, not about tasks, not about errands, about breath, about how lucky you are that you didn't wake to fire or illness or pounding at the door, about how your body, though creaky and slow, has carried you again into another day, about how sleep wrapped around you like a quiet friend and asked nothing but that you let go. There is a quiet practice, an informal one, in which Edo people would give thanks for waking. Not always aloud, sometimes just a bow of the head while still lying down. Sometimes a small phrase under the breath, "Kyou mo ikasete moraimasu." Today too I am allowed to live. You do not speak it, but you feel it, and then you sit up. It's not dramatic. Your body is reluctant, your joints pop, your arms stretch forward and then up. You yawn, long and unashamed. The sound is small but somehow satisfying. The quilt slides from your shoulders, and cool air brushes against your neck. You look around your room properly now. Everything is slightly different in this early light. The inkstone glints faintly. The brush from last night's writing sits where you left it, resting diagonally across a cloth. The folded paper beneath your futon is slightly creased but intact. You lift it gently and unfold it. Dream. You trace the brush strokes with your finger. The lines are calm, steady. You wonder what you dreamed. Nothing lingers clearly, but your body feels rested. That's enough. In Edo, dream interpretation was a casual art, not a science. People shared their dreams at breakfast or wrote them in diaries. A dream of birds meant freedom. A dream of water suggested travel. A dream of writing often meant clarity, or longing, or simply too much tea the night before. You remember a dream fragment now, a bridge made of lanterns, a fox bowing at a shrine. Nonsense, probably, but it makes you smile. You fold the paper and place it gently back on your desk. You will keep it, not as a record, but as a reminder. Next, you begin to fold your bedding. In Edo, even simple households followed a quiet code of tidiness. Futons were not left sprawled. They were folded each morning, then tucked into wooden chests or placed in the corner. It was believed that order in the room shaped order in the mind. You smooth the quilt, press the seams, roll the mattress slowly. Your fingers work without thinking. The motions are inherited, passed down like recipes or lullabies. You open the screen slightly. Outside, the sky is pale blue, kissed with pink. A neighbour moves quietly in the yard, tying her hair with one hand and adjusting a basin of water with the other. She doesn't see you, but you feel no need to speak. You inhale the morning air. It smells like stone, like steam, like something new waiting. Soon you'll light the fire, brew the tea, maybe write a little more before the day begins. But not yet. For now, the world is still stretching, and you are part of that stretch. The dream has ended. The day has not yet begun, and here you are, in between. The day is blooming slowly now, unfolding like a well-practiced poem whispered across rooftops. You're sitting in the same spot as before, your small room still quiet, still soft, but no longer dim. Light has filtered through your shoji screens, and though it is not yet bright enough to cast shadows, you can no longer pretend it is night. Outside, Edo has begun to stir in full. You hear it in the steady beat of footsteps down the alley, in the clack of wooden sandals echoing against stone. You smell it in the air, grains cooking, miso simmering, firewood catching. The city doesn't erupt awake, it unspools, layer by layer, sound by sound, and you're in no rush to join it. You remain seated for a moment longer, legs tucked beneath you, hands resting loosely in your lap. Your robe is neatly tied, your hair combed, your futon folded with care. But your mind? Your mind is still lingering in that sacred space between silence and action, between knowing you must move and savouring the fact that, for just a few more minutes, you don't have to. In Edo, mornings weren't hurried, at least not by the common folk who knew better than to sprint into the day without preparing their spirit first. Whether you were a merchant, a craftsman, a servant, or a scholar, how you woke often set the tone for everything else. You listen now to the water warming in your kettle, the quiet rhythmic tap of bubbles nudging the iron sides. It's not boiling, not yet, just humming, like the city, like your breath. You lift the lid briefly, letting the steam rise in curls. It smells faintly metallic, faintly of earth. You reach for your tea leaves. Not your finest batch, not the kind for guests or rituals, just the everyday kind, slightly bitter, dependable. You measure them slowly, respectfully, and place them in your old clay teapot. It has a small chip on the lid. You never bothered to fix it. Something about that little imperfection feels right in your hand. You pour the water, watch the leaves bloom, then wait. Patience is the first lesson of the day. While the tea steeps, you look around your room. The inkstone sits quietly on your desk, a fine dusting of soot clinging to its edge. The brush from last night has dried into a crisp fan of horsehair. You'll clean it later. For now, you let it rest. On the windowsill, a shaft of light finds a crack in the paper, casting a golden line across the floor like a path you haven't walked yet. You follow it with your eyes. You wonder where it leads. Outside, the neighbour's child is laughing. A sudden bright sound. It cuts through the quiet like a bird in flight. You hear her mother scold gently, half-heartedly in that tone only mothers know. Then comes the sound of sweeping. Long strokes of a straw broom brushing yesterday away. You pour your tea. It is still a little too hot. You sip anyway. The flavour is sharp at first, then softens into something floral and faintly grassy. You close your eyes, let it rest on your tongue. You swallow, then breathe. This is not about caffeine. This is about grounding. In Edo, people didn't rush into tasks. They moved like the river, deliberate, winding, never frantic. You feel that now as you cradle your teacup and take another sip. Your body's waking not from shock but from invitation. You rise, not quickly. You place the teacup down and stand, rolling your shoulders once, then twice. You stretch your arms overhead. Your robe shifts with the movement, letting in a breath of cool air. You walk slowly to the window and open it wider. The street is alive now, but gently. 2 vendors pass by, one carrying baskets of mochi, the other selling pickled radish from a cart that squeaks with each push. An old man walks past with a fishing pole over his shoulder and a straw hat tipped low. A girl runs by with a bundle of cloth in her arms, probably laundry for the well. You bow slightly, just in case one of them glances up. The wind stirs your sleeves. You return inside, retrieve the broom from its corner, and begin to sweep the entrance to your room. It's not dirty, not really, but the act itself is what matters. In Edo, to sweep was to show respect, not just for guests, but for yourself. A clean threshold meant a clear beginning. You sweep in long, even strokes. The bristles whisper against the wood. Dust gathers in little swirls near the edges. You pause, bend down, and gather them into a cloth. Your movements are slow, intentional, the kind that need no audience to matter. Afterward, you pour the last of your tea into your cup. It has cooled now. The flavour is mellow, almost sweet. You drink it in 2 long swallows. Then exhale. In the distance, you hear the temple bell. Not the deep, heavy gong of night, but the lighter, more cheerful one that marks the 6th hour, roughly 6 or 7 in the morning. It rings once, then again, then once more. A rhythm older than your grandfather. The city is fully awake, but still not loud. Edo isn't noisy in the way you'd expect. It murmurs. It sings softly to itself. It lets you join when you're ready. And now, perhaps you are. You move to your desk. You smooth the blank sheet of paper lying beside the one marked Yume, Dream. The brush is dry, but your hand knows what to do. You reach for the ink, grind it slowly. Water, motion, patience. The ink forms again, black as the inside of your own closed eyelids. You dip the brush. Hold it over the paper. What will you write? You don't know. That's not the point. You're not trying to make art. You're not even trying to make sense. You're trying to make presence. The first stroke is long and slow, then another. You're not painting words, you're painting time. The kind of time that can't be rushed. The kind that carries you gently into whatever the day might bring. Outside, the sun has cleared the rooftops. A crow lands near your window. It caws once, a bit hoarsely, then hops along the beam. The day is no longer waiting, but it is still welcoming. By now, the city of Edo is fully awake, but not in a frantic, rushing way. It's a different kind of aliveness, a layered hum that stretches from the narrow alleyways to the tiled rooftops, from the echoing public baths to the soft clatter of chopsticks in wooden bowls. It's the kind of morning that builds like a melody, gently, patiently, each note folding into the next. You sit in your doorway for a moment longer, one leg stretched out, the other folded beneath you. The breeze touches your cheek, and the robe at your collar flutters slightly. There's steam rising from your tea, now cooled enough to drink in slow sips. And although the city moves around you, your little room remains still. Still, but not silent. Never truly silent. From the street outside, you hear 2 merchants arguing. Not angrily, just with the musical rhythm of men who have known each other too long to argue seriously. Something about fish, or maybe sake. One of them laughs, a deep belly sound, and the other pretends to scold him with a slap of his fan against a basket. You take another sip of tea, letting the steam fog your vision for just a moment. It's green, sharp, slightly astringent, but comforting in its familiarity. You've drunk this same type of tea for years, perhaps decades, and still it manages to surprise you with its warmth. You set the cup down and finally stand. The day is ready for you, and you, at last, are ready for it. You step into your sandals, checking that they face the right way, always toes forward. In Edo, small signs of order mean everything. They signal attention, discipline, balance. Even if your world is no bigger than this alleyway, your sandals still matter. Today, there's no urgent errand, no appointment or delivery. But that never stopped anyone from walking. In this city, wandering is an art form, and you've become something of an expert. You begin down the street with no destination in mind. The stone beneath your feet is warm already, kissed by the sun rising just above the tiled roofs. A cat crosses your path, pausing to glance up at you before disappearing into a hedge of azalea bushes that haven't bloomed yet. cat is familiar. You've seen it dozens of times, no collar, probably belongs to no one and everyone at once. You pass a tofu vendor wheeling a cart. The metal bell attached to his axle dings with every turn of the wheel. He sings softly, not for customers, just for the rhythm. You nod. He nods back. No words are exchanged. They aren't needed. You turn a corner and find yourself in front of a row of shops beginning to open. Wooden shutters are propped up. A woman sweeps the front step with long, patient strokes. She stops occasionally to look up and squint at the sky, as if trying to guess the mood of the weather before hanging her laundry. You pause in front of a stall selling ink and brushes. The owner, a man with eyebrows so long they curve like willow branches, is arranging his wares by texture and price. He catches your eye. "Back for more?" he asks, smiling without showing his teeth. "Not today," you reply softly. "Just looking." He shrugs. "Looking's free." You move along. Next, you pass a group of boys carrying buckets, likely tasked with collecting water for their homes. They race each other, splashing their bare feet on the stone path. One loses a sandal and has to hop back on one foot, grinning. They remind you of your younger days, when the biggest concern was how far you could run before breakfast. Historians often focus on the structure of Edo, its social classes, its feudal system, its bureaucracy. But to live here, to actually be here, is to understand that the heartbeat of the city isn't in scrolls or regulations. It's in the moments, the quiet smiles, the cracked teacups, the creaking of bamboo in the wind. As you near the edge of your neighbourhood, you reach a small shrine tucked between two buildings. You didn't mean to come here, but your feet brought you anyway. That's how most shrine visits begin. Not with intention, but with instinct. The gate is painted red, slightly chipped from time and rain. You bow as you pass through, not because you must, but because it feels rude not to. The stone steps are uneven beneath your feet. You climb them slowly, savouring the silence that thickens as you approach the heart of the grounds. There's no one else here. Just a pair of pigeons cooing softly from the roof beams. You step up to the wooden box and drop in a single coin. You clap twice, loudly enough to wake the gods, softly enough not to startle the birds. Then you bow. No prayer, just thanks. Thanks for the tea, for the dream, for the breath. A breeze lifts the edge of your robe. The sun filters through the pine branches above, scattering flecks of gold onto the ground. You imagine the city breathing beneath your feet, and for a moment everything feels aligned. On the way back home you stop by a vegetable seller whose daikon are so white they gleam in the sun. You pick two, wrap them in cloth, and tuck them under your arm. No words are needed. You leave a coin in the tray. Walking home, you feel lighter. Not because the vegetables are small, but because the weight of the morning has settled into your chest like a warm stone. You've moved, listened, noticed, bowed. You've wandered without need and returned without haste. When you arrive at your door, you remove your sandals, step inside, and slide the screen shut behind you. Your room is cool again, shaded from the sun now high in the sky. You place the daikon beside your writing desk. Refill the kettle. The day, still new, waits for your next gesture. You pick up your brush and begin again. Back inside, your room welcomes you like an old friend. Familiar, quiet, softly lit by the shifting morning sun. The kettle has cooled again, but you don't mind. There's no schedule here, no clanging bell to signal a start. In Edo, a life well lived is one stitched together by rhythm, not urgency. You set the daikon gently on a clean cloth near the brazier. Their skin is smooth and damp from the vendor's rinse bucket, and for a moment, you admire them like a painter studying his brush. You'll cook them later, maybe with miso or dried sardines. Or maybe you'll gift one to the old widow next door whose knees aren't what they used to be. She's always grateful for small things. For now, though, you return to your desk. The brush waits where you left it, still slightly damp from the earlier strokes. The inkstone sits beside it, surface gleaming, the shallow pool of black ink catching the light like a still pond. Your last character from this morning's meditation Yume rests quietly on a scrap of paper nearby. You glance at it, then turn to the fresh page. You breathe, you dip, you draw. This time the strokes are slower. You're not writing words so much as writing silence. Each line lands gently, like a footprint on soft earth. You don't need meaning, not in the way books need it. What you need is motion, repetition, ink moving on paper, the body in conversation with the quiet. There's something deeply Edo about this. Historians sometimes struggle to explain this aspect of the period, the quiet labour, the devotion to tasks that seem to have no measurable output. But in your world, meaning isn't always loud. Sometimes it's shaped by hands doing small, invisible things. Folding, washing, writing, breathing. You pause to stretch your fingers. Look outside. The alley has changed again. More voices now. A distant clatter of a vendor's cart rolling over uneven stone. The rhythmic snap of laundry being shaken out before hanging. 2 dogs barking, not out of anger but joy. The morning has shifted fully into day. You rise, walking slowly to the screen. Outside, your neighbour's boy is filling a bucket from the communal well. He struggles a little with the weight, but doesn't call for help. You remember when he was too small to lift even the lid. Now look at him. Barefoot, determined, splashing a little but proud of it. He glances up and sees you watching. You raise your hand in a small wave. He nods once, serious, like a samurai being acknowledged. You smile and step back inside. You prepare lunch slowly, starting with a small pot of rice. The grains clink into the wooden bowl with a sound that's more satisfying than it has any right to be. You rinse them carefully, 3 times, like your grandmother taught you, until the water runs nearly clear. Then you set them to soak while you slice the daikon. The knife glides easily. The slices fall one after another, soft thuds against the board. The smell is fresh, peppery. You add a little miso, some shaved bonito if you have it, and set it to simmer over the coals. The scent will fill the room in a few minutes, curling through the paper screens and into the alley beyond. Cooking, like writing, is a kind of steady magic. As the soup simmers, you step back to your desk. You don't write now, you just sit. The steam rises, time passes. You remember a story told at the bathhouse once. Something about a man who spent his whole life writing poems no one read. He pinned them to trees, tucked them into sandals, slipped them between the slats of bridges. When he died, people found hundreds of verses scattered across the city. Most had been stepped on, swept away or soaked by rain, but some were still dry, still waiting. You liked that story. Not because of the poetry, but because he wrote anyway. Maybe that's what you're doing too. You stand when the rice begins to bubble. Your lunch is simple. Rice, soup, a pickled plum. You eat slowly, using your chopsticks like extensions of your own fingers. The rice is soft, the soup just salty enough, the daikon tender from the slow boil. It tastes like effort, like quiet, like a reward earned not through labour, but through noticing. You wash your bowl as soon as you finish. In Edo, cleanliness wasn't just hygiene, it was order, a sign of internal harmony. Dirty tools meant a cluttered mind, so you wipe the pot, rinse the chopsticks, dry everything with a cloth that's been hanging on the line since yesterday. You sit again, now with a full belly and an empty list. The rest of the day stretches out ahead of you like a scroll, blank, waiting, calm. You could copy a chapter from your favourite book. You could take another walk. You could mend the seam that's been loosening on your sleeve. You could do nothing. That's the beauty of Edo life, isn't it? The space between obligation and indulgence is filled with grace, so you remain seated, quiet and still, as the breeze lifts the edge of the curtain and birdsong replaces the voices from the alley. Time passes unnoticed. That is its gift to you, and you accept it fully. You. By now, the sun has climbed well past the rooftops, warming the sloped tiles and sending steady beams of light through the streets and paper windows of Edo. Your room no longer wears shadows. Everything is painted in pale gold, soft, calm, unwavering. You've moved through your morning as quietly and deliberately as any Edo townsman might, and now the city around you is fully alive in its midday rhythm. Yet here you are, still cradled in stillness. You're sitting on the tatami, legs stretched out, your back gently resting against the wall. There's a second cup of tea in your hands, cooler now than before, but comforting all the same. The scent has mellowed, the edge has faded. It's no longer a tea for waking, it's a tea for watching. Outside, through the slightly opened screen, the alley has shifted. What was once populated by street vendors calling their morning wares is now home to quieter traffic. A man carries 2 wooden buckets across his shoulders. The oak creaks with every step, the water sloshing inside each pail like a slow drumbeat. A child lingers at the corner of the alley, kneeling to trace something in the dust with a stick. She doesn't look up when a passing sparrow flutters close enough to brush her shoulder. You smile. There's a peculiar beauty in these unnoticed moments, the type no one writes about, the ones that don't make it into historical records or scrolls, yet somehow they are the heartbeat of the city. The lifeblood of Edo doesn't flow through the palaces or the samurai compounds. It moves through the alleys, the courtyards, the breath shared quietly between tea sips. Your tea is nearly finished. You set the cup down, brush your hands on your knees, and lie down gently on your side. This isn't a nap, not exactly, more of a rest. A sigh. In Edo, taking a pause at midday was as normal as boiling rice in the morning or sweeping one's step. No one judged you for being still. In fact, people might have worried if you weren't. The tatami is cool against your arm. The scent of woven rush is earthy, grounding. You face the paper screen, letting the filtered sunlight touch your face. Not harsh, just warm enough to remind you it's still there. Your thoughts drift, not in a structured, logical way, but in that soft watercolour wash of half-remembered dreams and present sounds. You think of the boy you passed earlier, guiding a cricket in a bamboo cage. You remember the old woman tying bundles of herbs with red string. You think about your grandfather's story, the one he always told at this hour, about the monkey who tricked a fisherman and then lived in his house for a week pretending to be his cousin. Nonsense, of course, but you like the part where the monkey made soup. Outside, the city murmurs on. You hear a bamboo wind chime from a house 2 doors down. The hollow wooden notes tap gently in no particular rhythm, just enough to break the silence without disturbing it. And then, footsteps, light, deliberate ones. You don't need to look. You know the sound. It's the widow from next door, the one with the soft laugh and the garden full of morning glories. She walks past your screen, a basket in one hand, a cloth draped over her elbow. She stops just briefly, perhaps sensing you inside. A moment later, something is placed softly by your door. You wait until her steps fade before rising. You open the screen. A small hand-woven basket sits there. Inside, 3 slices of pickled eggplant wrapped in shiso leaves, the kind only she knows how to make. Tart, purple, perfumed with a faint bite of plum vinegar. No note, no greeting, just presence. You bow toward her retreating direction, even if she can't see it. Then you bring the basket in. You sit at your desk once more, setting the eggplant down beside your inkstone. The room smells faintly of tea, ink, and now, vinegar. It is a quiet feast. You press your palms together and whisper, "Itadakimasu." Not to anyone in particular, just the world. You take a bite. The eggplant is soft, tangy, and cool, a perfect contrast to the warmth of the day. The shiso leaf tickles the back of your tongue with that strange peppery brightness. It wakes you up in a different way, not to start the day, but to remind you that you're in the middle of it, fully present. You eat the rest slowly, with care, with thanks. In Edo, there was no shame in a simple meal, no expectation for abundance. Taste was found in attention, in balance, in the harmony between textures. What mattered more was who prepared it, who gave it, and that it was shared. When you finish, you rinse your hands in the basin. The water is cooler now, a welcome relief. You pat your hands dry on the cloth near the window and sit again in stillness. From your seat, you watch the light shift. The angle of the shadows is starting to lean. Not quite afternoon yet, but no longer early. This is the heart of the day, its warmest, brightest centre. You hear a laugh in the alley. 2 boys race past, carrying what looks like a folded kite between them. A third follows, his hair sticking up wildly in the back. They are barefoot, breathless, and full of the joy that only exists when nothing is scheduled and everything is play. Their sound fades quickly. In their place you hear the delicate beat of a cloth being shaken free of dust. Somewhere a housekeeper prepares a guest room. Perhaps a traveller is expected, or perhaps it's habit, the kind passed down through mothers and grandmothers, that rooms must always be ready for whoever might appear. You open your writing drawer and take out a fresh sheet of paper. The brush from earlier is still soft, the inkstone still wet. You grind a little more ink, not quickly, not roughly, in circles, in rhythm. The smell is rich and familiar, like old books and river stone. You dip your brush and write just one word, oku, depth, inner space, that which lies behind or within, You blow gently to dry the ink, though it's barely needed. The word glistens for a moment, then settles into the page like a sigh. Outside, the sound of the neighbourhood grows quieter again. Not asleep, not hushed, just pausing. It is the nature of Edo to ebb and flow like this. The pot boils once more. You pour a cup, this one lighter than before. You drink slowly, eyes half closed, body fully relaxed. For a while you write nothing. You listen, to the wind, to the walls, to the faint clatter of a distant cart, to yourself. In Edo you don't chase time, you let it sit beside you, like a friend. The afternoon deepens gently. The light in your room slowly turning from bright gold to a softer amber hue. It creeps across the tatami in angled stripes, brushing the edge of your desk and warming the lower half of the paper screen. Time in Edo moves like a river, not in violent currents or crashing waves, but in slow, deliberate turns. You're still seated in your room, the silence pressing around you not like a weight, but like a blanket. The kettle has stopped boiling now. The last of the tea sits lukewarm in your cup, but you keep holding it anyway, more for the comfort of its shape than the warmth inside. Your fingertips trace the slight chip on the rim, a familiar flaw that has somehow grown dear to you over the years. This cup has survived 2 moves, 4 visitors, and at least 1 accidental tumble. Still here. Still whole enough to serve. Outside, the sounds of the alleyway have begun to stretch themselves thin. The clatter of morning vendors is gone. Even the neighbourhood dogs seem to have settled into shady corners. The air feels suspended, like the city is drawing a long breath before exhaling into evening. You stand slowly, placing the cup down, and walk across the room to the window. Your feet make soft pats on the woven straw, and your robe sways just slightly with your motion. You slide the screen aside and look out, not to see anything new, but to witness the same view in a new light. The alley is dappled in shadow now. The sun, now behind the western rooftops, slips between slats of wood and narrow eaves. You can see your neighbour's laundry swaying, white shirts and blue robes dancing lazily on the line. A cicada chirps, then another joins, and another. Within moments, their song becomes a warm electric buzz, vibrating through the walls like summer itself trying to speak. You step outside. The stones beneath your sandals are warmer than you expect, having absorbed the sun's weight all day. As you turn the corner, you notice the air has shifted. Not quite cooler, but different. Like the temperature has stopped rising and begun its slow descent. The smell of soy sauce drifts past, carried from someone's kitchen. Likely pickles, maybe simmered fish. You can almost hear a pot lid rattling. Further ahead, a merchant begins folding his stall's canopy. He stacks lacquered trays, brushes off cloth, counts coins without looking at them. You pass quietly, offering a small bow. He returns it with a nod, one hand still weighing the day's takings. A boy nearby sweeps the front of a sweet shop, his broom swishing against the stone. He moves slowly, clearly bored, but keeps at it nonetheless. This time of day in Edo has no grand name. No temple bell announces it, but everyone knows it. It's the space between industry and rest, between errands and meals, a quiet edge between the chapters of the day. You pause beside a wooden fence where the vines have begun curling toward the street. Tiny white blossoms cling to them, their fragrance barely noticeable unless you lean in. You do. It smells like honey left too long in the sun, faint, sweet, almost sleepy. You continue walking, toward the canal again, or maybe just toward wherever your feet take you. A cat darts across your path. You recognize it from the morning. Same slow stride, same clipped ear. It doesn't look at you this time. It doesn't need to. You've both already shared the day. You pass a group of children playing a game involving stones and claps and a series of shouted numbers. You don't understand the rules, and they probably don't either. That's not the point. One girl looks up and stares at you for a long second, then smiles suddenly and goes back to her game. You end up at a quiet bridge, the kind no one builds anymore, narrow and arched, with a single rail made of polished wood. You lean on it, watching the water below. The canal flows slowly, carrying bits of light and leaf and shadow. A single dragonfly hovers above it, holding itself in perfect stillness before zipping away. The sky's different now, still blue, but deeper. More indigo than azure. The clouds have turned soft at the edges, tinged with orange where the sun touches them. This is the part of the day where memory begins to stick, where everything starts to feel just a little more like something you'll remember later. You make your way back, not in a hurry, never in a hurry. As you approach your house, the sounds grow more domestic. A mother scolding gently, the splash of water in a wash basin, the thud of a futon being fluffed. You slip inside again, sliding the screen shut behind you with a soft wooden shuck. It echoes faintly, like punctuation on a thought. Your room is cooler now. The shadows are longer. You light a small oil lamp, the flame fluttering once, then settling into a soft golden globe. Its light doesn't chase away the dusk, it just makes a space within it. A circle of warmth. You sit once more, not to write, not to read, just to sit. Your fingers rest on your knees. You listen to the cicadas, to the creak of wood, to the whisper of the flame. You feel the rhythm of your breath, long in, long out. A pause, then again. And with it comes a thought, not new but newly noticed, that nothing remarkable has happened today, and that is what makes it perfect. The ordinary has been allowed to be itself, nothing rushed, nothing ruined, no great story but hundreds of small ones, a shared smile, a folded robe, a bowl of soup that needed nothing more than warmth, a word written for no one but yourself. You bow your head slightly, not in reverence, but in recognition. You are here, still part of this city, this day, this light. And though the evening is close, you have not yet left the moment. Evening in Edo doesn't descend like a curtain. It glides in, moment by moment, as if the day is slowly bowing and exiting the stage with perfect grace. The light in your room, once a rich golden hue, now leans into deeper amber, then into grey-blue shadow. The oil lamp by your desk glows softly, its flame no longer lighting the room as much as warming it, like the last glowing coal in a fire that was never meant to blaze. You're seated once again near your writing desk, where the paper still holds your most recent word, shinobu, to endure, to be patient. It sits there quietly, like it's been waiting for the day to catch up to its meaning. The ink is dry now. The strokes hold no shine, just quiet permanence. You pick up the page and fold it carefully along the creases you've used all your life. In Edo, folding something well is a form of respect. Respect for the object, and for the time you gave it. You tuck it away in the small wooden drawer that holds your other words. Simple ones, personal ones, ones never meant to be read aloud. It closes with a soft click. Outside your window, the world has shifted again. It's not noisy, but it's no longer still either. A soft, low buzz hums through the city like breath held in the throat of every home. The shops are closing, doors are being latched, slippers tap gently on polished wood floors as people settle into the folds of evening. You rise from the desk and move toward your bedding. The futon is already laid out from earlier, but you smooth it again, not because it's wrinkled, but because you want it to be ready. You pat the edges down gently, adjusting the pillow. A folded robe lies beside it, waiting for the cold that might drift in later. The room is cool now. You pull your shawl tighter, tying it across your chest with a single knot. There's something comforting about the weight of it, the way it reminds you that the day is done. It's a signal, not just to your body but to your mind. Time to let go, time to begin forgetting the things that don't matter until morning. But first, one last walk. You slide open the shoji with slow hands. The sound is so familiar it barely registers, the soft shuff of paper and wood. The air outside greets you immediately. It's crisp, edged with the faint scent of cooked soy sauce, roasted barley, and the subtle perfume of night-blooming jasmine. You take a deep breath. The coolness fills your lungs like water poured into a still bowl. The alley is nearly empty now. A few lights remain. Paper lanterns swinging gently in the breeze, their shapes casting long shadows against wooden walls. You step into your sandals, toes first, and begin walking. Each step is slow. There's no destination. You're just part of the street now, part of the wood and stone and flickering light. You pass the tofu seller's stand, empty now, but still fragrant. The bamboo buckets are overturned to dry. A cloth hangs folded on the hook where his ladle once swayed. Farther down, you spot the corner noodle shop. Its shutters are drawn halfway down, but inside 2 men laugh over their last bowls. The sound is low, worn in the best way. It doesn't interrupt the evening, it completes it. As you continue, the wind picks up, brushing past your cheeks with fingers that smell like wood smoke and pine. A cat darts across the street and pauses beneath a lantern. Its eyes catch the light, glowing like two tiny stars. You meet its gaze. It doesn't move. Then, after a long second, it disappears into the alley, tail flicking once in farewell. You find yourself at the small footbridge that crosses a narrow canal, one you've walked over so many times the grooves in the wood feel like the shape of your own feet. You lean on the railing. The water below reflects the stars above, only broken by the occasional ripple of a fish rising or a breeze sweeping across the surface. It's quiet here. So quiet you can hear your own heartbeat in your ears, your own breath entering and leaving your chest. The sky is full of stars now. The moon is just beginning to rise above the far eaves. It's pale and not quite round, like a coin worn smooth from too many hands. You watch it slowly climb, its light turning the canal silver. From somewhere behind you, the distant chime of a temple bell begins to toll. Once, then twice, a pause, then again. The sound rolls through the night like a soft wave reminding you and everyone else that the world is still turning, still watching, still kind. You whisper Yoru, the word for night. Not aloud, just in your mind. It tastes like ink and breath and endings. You start your walk home. Each step feels slower now, not because you're tired, but because you don't want to hurry. You want to collect the final sounds of the day like coins in your sleeve. The creak of a gate, the hiss of water on hot stone, the crunch of dry leaves beneath your sandals. You pass a house where someone is singing, a lullaby perhaps, or a folk song meant to keep ghosts away. The voice is soft, female, alone. You return to your house just as the wind begins to still. The paper lantern by your door sways once more before settling. You slide the shoji shut behind you, letting the cool air remain outside. Inside, everything is just as you left it. Your lamp, your bedding, your brush resting neatly in its holder. You kneel before your futon and press your palms together for a moment. Not in prayer exactly, but in acknowledgement. Thank you, day. Thank you, sky. Thank you, small, ordinary life. You blow out the lamp. The room goes dark, but not pitch black. The moonlight creeps in through the paper walls, enough to give your space shape. The tatami becomes soft under your knees. The futon welcomes your body like an old friend. You lie down slowly, letting your muscles soften into the mat. Your shawl lies across your stomach, warm but not heavy. You fold your hands over your chest and stare at the ceiling. Even in the dim light, you can see the wooden beams, lines you've traced with your eyes 1,000 times before. And then, just before your eyelids begin to fall, you remember one last thing. You rise again, kneel by the desk. You take one last sheet of paper, just one. No brush this time, only your finger. You dip it in the shallow well of water by your inkstone and write invisibly across the page. Arigato, thank you. To the cup that didn't break, to the neighbour's eggplant, to the silence, to yourself. You sit until the water dries, and finally you return to bed. You pull the blanket up to your chin. You listen one last time, to the crickets, to the creak of wood, to your own slow breath. You close your eyes, and let the day end. Night has settled across Edo like a silk robe draped over the shoulders of the city. Not rushed, not loud, just there. It wraps the alleys and rooftops in darkness that isn't frightening, but soft, protective, like the final page of a story that knew exactly when to end. And you, now lying quietly beneath your cotton blanket, become just another character inside that story. Unwritten, unnamed, but perfectly placed. The air in your room is cool, the oil lamp has long since gone out, and the only light now seeps in from the moon, slipping through the paper screen in long pale ribbons. The faint outlines of your desk, your robe, your writing brush, all familiar shadows now, lie undisturbed. Nothing stirs except for your slow, even breath, and the faint creaking of wooden beams adjusting to the temperature of the night. You're not asleep yet, not fully, but you're not awake in the usual way either. Your thoughts drift like lanterns set adrift on water. No destination, no urgency, just one soft image following the next. You remember the eggplant from your neighbour, the exact green of the shiso leaf wrapped around it. You remember the boy and his cricket cage, the sound of the wings brushing against bamboo, the creak of the temple bell, the ink gliding across paper. All of it returns. not to demand your attention but to rest beside you. Outside, Edo exhales. From a house 2 streets down, you hear a final shutter being drawn closed. A door slides open, then closed. A man coughs. Somewhere, a shamisen offers one last chord. Half finished, perhaps. Then nothing. Stillness. Even the insects have changed their tone. No longer the sharp, rising tempo of summer day cicadas. Now it's the night singers, slower, deeper, lower to the ground. You roll slightly onto your side, drawing the blanket up to your shoulder. The futon responds with a soft sigh beneath you, moulded to the shape of your hips and shoulders. Your buckwheat pillow rustles as you shift like dry leaves folding gently in a breeze. These sounds don't disturb you, they soothe. They remind you that you're surrounded not by silence but by peace. The scent of tatami still lingers. It mixes now with the faint smoke of your extinguished lamp and the earthy trace of pine that rides in with the night air through a small crack near the floor. Each breath is filled with memory, not dramatic ones, but those tiny, unnoticed experiences that make up a life. The tilt of your teacup, the way the moonlight hit your inkstone, the faint warmth that remained in your sandals when you stepped back inside. You close your eyes, not tightly, just enough to invite the darkness. And in that darkness your mind begins to unfurl like a scroll, not racing, not searching, just wandering gently. You imagine the bridge again, the one over the canal, the way the water moved beneath it, catching the sky. You remember leaning on the railing, the way the wood felt cool against your palms. You remember the dragonfly that hovered for a moment before darting into the trees. And you recall the sound of the temple bell. Even now you think you can still hear it. Low, steady, like the heartbeat of the city itself. A reminder that time passes whether we chase it or not. That some endings need no punctuation. That sleep is not a surrender, but a continuation. Historians often debate whether the people of Edo truly experienced rest in the way we think of it today. Did they sleep deeply? Did they worry through the night? Were they content? Were they always working, always preparing? There are no clear answers, only clues, scattered through journals, drawings, fading fragments of poems. But you, lying here now, don't need a historian to confirm the truth of this moment. You feel it. The day is complete. Not because you accomplished something, not because you made progress, but because you were present for it. You tasted it, listened to it, carried it with both hands, then set it down gently as the sun disappeared. You think of writing once more, of rising from the futon, lighting the lamp, unrolling the paper, dipping your brush into ink. But your body has already let go. Your limbs are warm and heavy. Your breath is slow. The story is done for now. Instead, you lie still and imagine the word you would have written. Maybe Shizuka, quiet. Maybe Yasuragi, peace. Maybe just your name, written not to be read but simply to say, I was here. Your thoughts flicker back to childhood, to the first time you saw your father write at night. The way he sat in silence, posture so straight it seemed he might be carved from wood. You remember watching him through a gap in the screen, too young to understand the words, but old enough to know the weight they carried. You remember too the bedtime stories your grandmother whispered, not fairy tales but odd bits of family history. The uncle who kept eels under his floorboards, the cousin who could whistle every folk song in perfect pitch, the neighbour who once made sandals for a daimyo but never wore shoes himself. Each story ended with a chuckle, or a sigh, or silence. And now you realise you're the storyteller now. Maybe not aloud, maybe not with others, but you've carried the rhythm forward. One careful word at a time, one breath at a time, one bowl of rice, one folded futon, one lingering glance at the sky. And this day, this long, slow, ordinary day, is part of that same story. You let your hand fall gently across your chest. Your fingers rest over your heartbeat. Outside, the moon has risen higher. Its glow filters down the alley, slipping past roof tiles and catching in puddles left from an afternoon rinse. No one is out now. Even the inns have quieted. The city breathes slowly, fully, content to wait for dawn. You begin to drift. The thoughts don't stop. They just loosen. Their edges blur. Their colours fade to warm greys and blues. You're no longer holding the images of the day. They're holding you, carrying you, folding around you like the soft cotton of your blanket. You hear the last bell, the final toll of the evening, and you smile barely, but enough. You whisper without voice, "Arigato." Thank you for the taste of daikon in soup. Thank you for the cat on the fence. Thank you for the breath that didn't rush. Thank you for the quiet that arrived like an old friend. You turn once more in your bedding. And this time, you do not open your eyes. The ceiling, the beams, the world, they can wait. You're floating now. Not flying, not sinking, just gently carried on the still tide of the night. There is no more to do. You have already arrived.